My granddaughter gave me a fake obituary as a joke for my birthday. Don't worry, Grandma, it's just a matter of time. I smiled. By Monday, I rewrote my will overnight and her college fund had vanished. But let me tell you how we got there, because that moment didn't happen in isolation. It was the culmination of years of small cuts, tiny betrayals that I had ignored, brushed off, or explained away because they were family. The morning of my 68th birthday started like any other Saturday. I woke up in the empty house that had once been filled with laughter, back when Harold was still alive. 3 years since his passing, and I still reached for his coffee mug out of habit. The silence wasn't something you ever got used to. I had invited them all over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just the way we used to do it when Harold was here. My son Robert, his wife Jennifer, and our granddaughter Madison, 22 years old, college senior, the apple of everyone's eye, smart as a whip, that girl. But lately there was something in her smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. They arrived around 5. Madison bouncing through the door with that energy young people carry like it's infinite. She hugged me tight, and for a moment I felt that familiar warmth. This was my granddaughter, the little girl I'd raised more than her own parents had. "Happy birthday, Grandma," she sang out, holding a small wrapped box. "I got you something special this year." Robert and Jennifer settled into the living room, Jennifer immediately scrolling through her phone while Robert turned on the television. Not much had changed in our family dynamics over the years. I was the one who did the work, and they were the ones who showed up when it was convenient. Dinner went smoothly enough. We talked about Madison's classes, Robert's work at the insurance company, Jennifer's latest book club drama. Normal family conversation, the kind that fills space without saying much of anything real. After we finished the chocolate cake I'd made from scratch, Madison practically vibrated with excitement. "Okay, Grandma, time for your present." She handed me the small box with ceremony, and everyone gathered around. Even Jennifer put her phone down, which should have been my first warning sign. I opened it carefully, the way Harold had taught me to do with gifts, savoring the moment. Inside was a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly, expecting maybe a heartfelt letter or a poem she'd written. Instead, I found myself staring at what looked like a newspaper clipping. At the top, in bold letters, Obituary. Below that, my full name, Margaret Eleanor Thompson. My birth date was correct, but there was a death date too, just 3 months from now. The text below read like a real obituary. It mentioned Harold, listed Robert and Madison as survivors, even included details about my volunteer work at the library. Someone had put real effort into making this look authentic. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I read it twice, 3 times, waiting for the punchline that would make this make sense. It's hilarious, right? Madison was practically bouncing. I got the idea from this TikTok video. It's supposed to be like motivational or whatever, like, don't wait to live your life because you never know. I looked up to find all 3 of them watching me expectantly. Robert was chuckling, shaking his head like Madison had pulled some harmless prank. Jennifer had her phone out again, this time pointing it at me like she was recording my reaction. "Very creative," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "I mean, don't worry, Grandma," Madison continued, still grinning. "It's just a matter of time for all of us, right? But you're still kicking. This is just to remind you to, live it up while you can." They all laughed then. Robert's deep chuckle, Jennifer's tinkling giggle, Madison's bright peal of amusement. The sound filled my dining room, bounced off the walls where pictures of our family hung, echoed in the space where Harold's laughter used to live. I smiled. I even managed a little laugh of my own, because what else was I supposed to do? This was my family. This was my granddaughter, the child I'd helped raise, the girl whose college tuition I'd been paying for 3 years now. "Well," I said, folding the paper carefully and placing it back in the box. "That's certainly something I'll never forget." More laughter. Madison hugged me again, and I inhaled that familiar scent of her vanilla perfume and youth. But something had shifted inside me, like a piece of furniture moved just slightly out of place. You might not notice it right away, but eventually you'd keep bumping into it. They left around 9, Madison kissing my cheek and promising to call soon. Robert gave me his usual quick hug, and Jennifer air-kissed near my ear while checking her phone over my shoulder. I stood in my doorway watching their car pull away, the obituary box still in my hands. The porch light cast long shadows across my yard, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt truly alone. But it wasn't until I was lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling where Harold and I used to point out shapes in the plaster cracks, that Madison's words really hit me. "Don't worry, Grandma. It's just a matter of time." The way she'd said it, not with concern or love or even the casual thoughtlessness of youth. There had been something else in her voice. something that sounded almost like anticipation. I got up and retrieved the box from my dresser, reading the fake obituary again by lamplight. Someone had put real thought into this. They'd included details only family would know, written it in the style of the local newspaper. This wasn't a 5-minute internet joke. This was planning. As I finally drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling through my mind like a vulture. What if this wasn't really a joke at all? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Sunday morning came with its usual quietness, but the obituary sat on my nightstand like a stone in my chest. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that Madison was just being thoughtless the way young people sometimes are. But then I started remembering things. I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table where Harold and I had shared thousands of breakfasts. The morning light streaming through the lace curtains felt different somehow, like I was seeing my own life from the outside. That's when the memories started flooding back, each one adding weight to the growing unease in my stomach. I remembered when Robert was going through his divorce 15 years ago. He'd moved back in with us for 8 months, bringing his broken heart and empty wallet. Harold and I had welcomed him with open arms, never asking for rent, letting him heal in the safety of his childhood home. But it wasn't just the free room and board. When Robert was ready to start over, he needed money for a new apartment, a security deposit, furniture. Harold and I had been saving for a trip to Ireland, something we'd dreamed about since our honeymoon. We gave Robert that money instead. $23,000. Harold never said a word about it, just quietly canceled our travel plans. Family first, he'd said when I'd hesitated. Ireland will still be there when we're ready. We never made it to Ireland. Harold's heart attack came before we could save up again. Then there was Madison's private school tuition. When she was 13, Jennifer had decided the public schools weren't good enough for her daughter. She'd enrolled Madison in St. Catherine's Academy, one of the most expensive private schools in the state. 6 months later, Robert and Jennifer came to us in a panic. They couldn't afford the tuition. Madison was already settled, making friends, thriving in her new environment. What were they supposed to do? I was the one who suggested we help. Harold was getting ready to retire. We were planning to downsize, sell our big house, and buy something smaller. Instead, we took out a second mortgage to pay Madison's tuition. 4 years at St. Catherine's cost us our dream retirement home. It's an investment in her future, Jennifer had said, tears in her eyes. We'll pay you back when Robert gets his promotion. The promotion never came. The payment plan was quietly forgotten. College was even worse. Madison had her heart set on Northwestern University. Out-of-state tuition, room and board, spending money. The costs were staggering. Robert and Jennifer had applied for financial aid, but their income was just high enough to disqualify them from most assistance. We can't ask you to do this, Robert had said when they came to us junior year of Madison's high school, but his eyes were already calculating. She's our granddaughter, I'd replied, because what else could I say? Madison was standing right there, 17 years old and shining with potential. How do you look a child in the eye and tell them their dreams are too expensive? So I liquidated my retirement savings. Every penny Harold and I had put away for our golden years went to Northwestern. I took a part-time job at the library to help with my daily expenses, telling everyone I just wanted to stay busy. The truth was, I needed the money. But it wasn't just the big things. It was the constant stream of smaller requests that never seemed to end. Madison's car insurance, her spring break trips, the designer clothes that were necessary for fitting in at college, Jennifer's birthday dinners at expensive restaurants where somehow I always ended up paying the check, Robert's golf club membership that he couldn't quite afford but was important for networking. I gave and gave and gave because that's what grandmothers do. That's what mothers do. You sacrifice for your family because love isn't supposed to come with conditions. But sitting there in my kitchen that Sunday morning, I started to wonder when anyone had last given something to me. Not money, I didn't need their money, but time, attention, care. When was the last time Robert had called just to check on me? When was the last time Madison had visited without needing something? When was the last time Jennifer had asked about my life, my feelings, my dreams? I pulled out my checkbook and started going through the stubs. The numbers told a story I hadn't wanted to see. Madison's tuition payment due next month, $3,800. Her car payment, $450. Credit card payment for her emergency shopping trip last month, $1,200. In the past year alone, I'd given my family over $60,000. Money that was supposed to be supporting me in my old age was flowing out like water through a broken dam. I closed the checkbook and sat back in my chair. Harold's empty coffee mug sat across from me, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. Maggie, he used to say when I worried about money, we've got each other. That's all we really need. But I didn't have Harold anymore. And looking at those numbers, I wasn't sure I really had Robert and Madison either. What I had were people who showed up when they needed something and disappeared when they didn't. The obituary had a death date 3 months away. I wondered if that was how long they thought my money would last. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Madison's name appeared on the screen, and for just a moment my heart lifted. Maybe she was calling to apologize, to explain that the obituary really was just a misguided joke. "Hi, Grandma, how are you feeling today?" Her voice was bright and cheerful. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "Oh, busy with classes and everything. Actually, I was wondering if you could help me out with something small. There's this amazing opportunity to study abroad next semester in Paris, but I need to put down a deposit by Wednesday. It's only $3,000, and I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I get my summer job." Only $3,000, like it was pocket change. I looked at the obituary box still sitting on my counter. "Let me think about it," I said. "Think about it?" Madison's voice lost some of its sunshine. "Grandma, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The deadline is Wednesday. I can't wait." I said I'll think about it. There was a pause. Then Madison's voice turned cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Fine, but don't blame me if I miss out because you couldn't make a simple decision." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat holding the phone, feeling like I'd just been slapped. This was my granddaughter, the little girl who used to beg me to read her stories, who used to fall asleep in my lap during family movie nights. When had I become just a source of funding to her? When had my love become conditional on my ability to write checks? I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet where I kept important papers. Behind my insurance documents and Harold's death certificate, I found what I was looking for, my will. Harold and I had written it together 5 years ago, back when everything felt simple and safe. Madison was set to inherit the house, my savings, everything. Robert would get Harold's tools and personal effects. It seemed right at the time, the natural order of things. But looking at it now, I wondered if I'd been a fool. The obituary said I had 3 months to live. Maybe it was time to find out what my family really thought of me when they believed the money was about to run out. I decided to test my theory, but I needed to be smart about it. If my suspicions were right, if my family really saw me as nothing more than a checkbook with legs, then I had to know for certain before I did something I couldn't take back. Monday morning, I called Robert at his office. "Mom, hi," he answered, sounding distracted. "Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, honey. I was just wondering if you wanted to come over for dinner this week. We could make it a regular thing, like we used to when Dad was alive." There was a pause. "This week is pretty crazy for me. Jennifer's got book club Wednesday, and Madison needs help moving some stuff on Thursday. Maybe next week?" "Of course. I understand you're busy." I kept my voice light, but something twisted in my chest. I just miss having family around. "Mom, you know we love you. We're just in a really hectic phase right now. Things will calm down soon." Things will calm down soon. How many times had I heard that over the past 3 years? "Actually, Robert, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. I've been thinking about my finances, planning for the future. I'm wondering if I should consider moving somewhere smaller, maybe one of those retirement communities." "What?" His voice sharpened immediately. "Mom, you can't sell the house. Where would we have family gatherings? And what about all of Dad's things?" Interesting. Suddenly, he was concerned about family gatherings he never wanted to attend. "Well, I'm just thinking practically. The house is so big for one person, and the expenses keep growing. Maybe it would be better to downsize while I'm still healthy enough to make the transition myself." No, don't make any hasty decisions. "Look, why don't I come over this weekend and we can talk about it properly? Maybe there are other ways to handle your expenses." Other ways, like me continuing to pay for everything while living in a house too big for me, too expensive to maintain, just so he'd have somewhere to host the family gatherings he never wanted to plan. That afternoon, I drove to Madison's apartment near campus. I rarely dropped by unannounced, but I wanted to see her natural reaction to my visit. The building was one of those expensive student complexes with a pool and fitness center, the kind Jennifer had insisted Madison needed for her safety and social development. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, her face went through a complicated series of expressions: surprise, annoyance, then a quick recovery to forced warmth. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. May I come in?" She hesitated for just a moment too long. "Of course! I was just, studying." The apartment was immaculate, which surprised me. Madison had never been particularly tidy. Her laptop was open on the dining table, but the screen showed Facebook, not homework. I noticed she'd been shopping recently, too. Designer bags and new clothes were scattered across her bedroom, visible through the open door. "How are your classes going?" I asked, settling onto her expensive couch. "Great. Really great. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Did you think about the Paris program? I really need to know soon. I studied her face carefully. Madison, can I ask you something? Do you think about me when we're not together? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. What do you mean? Do you ever think about how I'm doing? Whether I'm lonely or sad or need anything? Of course I do, she said quickly. Too quickly. You're my grandmother. I love you. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for anything, just to see how I was? Madison's eyes darted away. I've been really busy with school, Grandma. You know how it is. Do I? I was never able to go to college. I got married right out of high school and started working to help your grandfather build his business. That's different. You had Grandpa. I'm all alone here. All alone. In an expensive apartment I was paying for, driving a car I'd bought, wearing clothes my money had purchased. Madison, what do you think will happen to me when I get old? Really old, I mean. She shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. I guess you'll figure it out? Maybe one of those nice retirement places? And who do you think will pay for that? Well, you have savings, right? And the house is worth a lot. There it was. She'd already calculated my worth, already planned how my assets would be liquidated when I became inconvenient. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Jennifer directly, without going through Robert first. Margaret, she answered, and I could hear the television in the background. Is everything all right? I'm fine, dear. I was just thinking about Madison's college expenses, and I wanted to ask you something. The television volume went down. Oh? When we agreed to help with her tuition, we talked about it being temporary, until you and Robert could take over the payments. I was wondering when you think that might happen. Silence. Then Jennifer's voice, carefully controlled. Well, things have been tight. Robert's been hoping for that promotion, but you know how corporate politics are. And with my part-time schedule, we're just not in a position to take on that kind of expense right now. I see. And when do you think you might be in that position? It's hard to say. These things take time. But Margaret, you know we appreciate everything you've done. Madison is so grateful. Is she? Because when I ask her about her future plans, about what happens when I'm not around to help anymore, she seems to just assume the money will always be there. Well, isn't it? You're in good health and you have that lovely house and Harold left you well provided for. Harold left me well provided for, as if the money I'd been pouring into their lives was somehow infinite, as if my own needs and future security were irrelevant. Jennifer, what would you do if something happened to me tomorrow? What do you mean? What if I died tomorrow? What would happen to Madison's education? Another pause. Well, I suppose we'd figure something out. Maybe loans, or she'd have to transfer to a state school. But Margaret, why are you talking like this? You're healthy as a horse, ready to keep pulling the financial wagon for years to come. That night, I sat in Harold's old chair and thought about the conversation I'd overheard at Madison's birthday party last month. I'd gone to the kitchen to get more ice and heard Jennifer talking to her sister on the phone in the hallway. Oh, Margaret will cover it, Jennifer had said with a laugh. She always does. She's got that whole guilt thing about Harold's death, like she needs to make up for something. It's actually pretty convenient. At the time, I'd told myself I'd misunderstood, but now those words echoed in my mind with crystal clarity. Pretty convenient. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my recent calls. Robert, Madison, Jennifer, always them calling me, always asking for something. When was the last time any of them had called just to check on me? I scrolled back through weeks of call logs. 2 months. It had been 2 months since anyone in my family had contacted me without wanting something. My fake obituary was still sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd left it. I picked it up and read it again, this time noticing things I'd missed before. It mentioned my generous spirit, and how I'd always put family first. It even included a line about how I'd lived to serve others. Who had written this? Who knew me well enough to capture those details, yet was callous enough to turn them into a joke? I thought about Madison's face when she'd given me the box, the way she'd been watching for my reaction. There had been something calculated about it, like she was conducting an experiment, testing to see how I'd respond to my own mortality. Testing to see if I understood my place in their world. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that this wasn't really a joke at all. This was a message, maybe even a warning. My time as the family ATM was supposed to be limited, and they wanted me to know it. I couldn't stop thinking about that obituary, so I decided to do something that felt both necessary and terrible. I was going to spy on my own family. Wednesday evening, I drove to Robert's house an hour earlier than expected for our dinner plans. I'd called to say I was coming, but when I got there, I could see through the front window that they were all gathered in the living room, deep in conversation. Instead of going to the front door, I walked around to the side of the house where the kitchen window was partially open. I felt like a criminal, crouching behind Jennifer's prized rose bushes, but I had to know what they said about me when they thought I wasn't listening. She's been acting weird since the birthday party, Madison was saying, like asking all these strange questions about what I think about her and stuff. What kind of questions? Robert's voice. Just weird stuff, like whether I think about her when she's not around and what's going to happen when she gets really old. It was uncomfortable. Maybe the obituary thing wasn't such a good idea, Jennifer said, though she didn't sound particularly concerned. I told you it might upset her. She laughed about it, Madison protested. She thought it was funny. Did she, though? Robert asked. I was watching her face and she looked pretty shocked. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it through the window. Look, Jennifer's voice was crisp, businesslike. Your mother isn't stupid, Robert. She's probably starting to realize that we expect her to support Madison through college and beyond. Maybe she's getting nervous about her own financial situation. Beyond? Madison's voice perked up with interest. What do you mean beyond? Graduate school, sweetie? Maybe law school, if that's what you decide. Your grandmother has more than enough money to see you through whatever you want to do. More than enough money. They'd been calculating my worth, planning my financial future without consulting me. But what if she doesn't want to? Madison asked. What if she gets all weird about money like she did with the Paris trip? She'll come around, Robert said with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. She always does. She can't help herself. Besides, Jennifer added, where else is her money going to go? It's not like she has any other grandchildren, and she certainly doesn't need it all for herself. She's got that big house, no mortgage, Social Security. She's set. She's set. As if my financial security was a given, as if I owed them my entire life savings simply by virtue of being related to them. The obituary was actually kind of genius, Robert continued, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It probably got her thinking about mortality, about what happens to her money when she's gone, might make her more generous while she's still alive. My knees started shaking. I had to grip the windowsill to keep from falling over. You think that's why she's been asking weird questions? Madison asked. Probably. She's realizing she can't take it with her, so she might as well make sure we're taken care of. Speaking of which, Jennifer's voice turned practical. We should probably start talking to her about updating her will. Make sure everything is structured properly for tax purposes. Good point. Maybe I should suggest she meet with an estate attorney. You know, frame it as being responsible, planning ahead. They were planning my death while I was still alive. They were discussing my will, my money, my future, as if I was already gone. What about the house? Madison asked. I mean, when Grandma... what happens to the house? Well, it's worth at least $400,000, Robert said. Maybe more in this market. We'll probably sell it and split the proceeds. Split them how? I figure most of it should go toward your future. College costs, graduate school, maybe a down payment on your first house. Your grandmother would want that. Your grandmother would want that. They were speaking for me, deciding what I would want, all while planning to spend my money before I was even dead. I'd heard enough. Actually, I'd heard more than enough. I crept back to my car, my whole body trembling with rage and heartbreak. They thought I was a fool. They thought I was a soft-hearted old woman who could be manipulated with hugs and fake affection while they systematically drained my life savings. The obituary hadn't been a joke. It had been a preview. I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to compose myself before going to the front door. When Jennifer finally answered, her smile was so perfectly fake it made my stomach turn. Margaret, you're early. Come in, come in. I walked into the living room where my son and granddaughter were sitting, the same people who'd just been planning my financial demise. They both smiled at me with such warmth, such apparent love, that for a moment I almost doubted what I'd heard. How are you feeling, Mom? Robert asked, standing to give me a hug. You look a little pale. I'm fine, I managed to say. Just tired. Well, sit down and relax. Jennifer made that roast you like. We sat down to dinner, and they chatted about normal things. Madison's classes, Robert's work, Jennifer's book club. They asked about my week, complimented my hair, told me how good I looked for my age. It was a perfect performance of a loving family dinner. But I could hear their real voices underneath it all, planning and calculating and waiting for me to die. Grandma, Madison said as we were finishing dessert, I've been thinking about what you said the other day about planning for the future and stuff. Oh? Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, we should all be thinking ahead. Maybe you should talk to someone about making sure all your affairs are in order. You know, just to be responsible. There it was. Less than 2 hours after they'd discussed manipulating me into updating my will. Madison was planting the seed. That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart. I could help you find someone, Robert offered. A good estate attorney. Someone who specializes in situations like yours. Situations like mine. Elderly widows with money and gullible hearts. I'll think about it, I said. After dinner, I kissed them all goodbye and drove home in a daze. Everything I'd believed about my family, every assumption I'd made about their love for me, had been shattered in the space of one overheard conversation. They didn't love me. They loved my money. They weren't waiting for me to die naturally. They were actively hoping for it, planning for it, maybe even counting on it happening sooner rather than later. The obituary hadn't been a joke. It had been preparation. I sat in my kitchen that night, Harold's coffee mug across from me, and made a decision. If they wanted to play games with my mortality, if they wanted to treat me like I was already dead, then I would give them exactly what they were asking for. But first, I was going to take back control of my own life. I opened my laptop and started researching estate attorneys, but not the kind Robert had in mind. I was looking for someone who could help me make sure my money went exactly where I wanted it to go, and it wasn't going to be to the people who were counting the days until my funeral. Thursday morning, I called the law office of Patricia Hendricks, an estate attorney whose reviews emphasized discretion and thorough documentation. I needed someone who would understand what I was about to do and why it was necessary. "Mrs. Thompson," she said when I explained my situation over the phone, "I think we should meet in person. Can you come in this afternoon?" Her office was downtown, nothing fancy, but Patricia herself was exactly what I needed. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to my story without judgment, taking careful notes. "So you want to change your will completely," she said when I finished. "Completely. I want to leave everything to the Sunset Manor Foundation. They provide support for elderly people who've been abandoned by their families." Patricia nodded slowly. "And you're certain about this decision?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." "All right, we can have new documents drawn up by Monday." "But Mrs. Thompson, I have to ask, are you planning to tell your family about these changes?" I smiled for the first time in days. "Eventually, but I want to choose the moment carefully." That evening, I called Robert and told him I'd been feeling unwell. Chest pains, shortness of breath. The kind of symptoms that would worry a loving son. Within an hour, all three of them were at my house, their faces masks of concern. "Mom, you should go to the hospital," Robert said, holding my hand. "Chest pains aren't something to mess around with." "I'm sure it's nothing," I said weakly. "Just stress, probably." "Stress about what?" Jennifer asked, though I caught her exchanging a quick glance with Madison. "Oh, financial things. Planning for the future. I've been thinking about what Madison said about getting my affairs in order." Madison perked up. "Did you call that attorney Dad mentioned?" "I did. I'm meeting with someone on Monday." "That's great." "Grandma," Madison said, and her relief was palpable. "You'll feel so much better once everything is organized." They stayed for an hour, fussing over me, making tea, adjusting pillows. The perfect picture of a caring family. But I could see the calculation behind their eyes, the way they looked at me like I was a problem that was finally going to solve itself. Monday afternoon, I signed my new will. Patricia had done exactly what I'd asked. Every penny of my estate, including the house, would go to the Sunset Manor Foundation. Robert and Madison were mentioned only to specifically exclude them from any inheritance. "There's one more thing I'd like to do," I told Patricia. "I want to write a letter explaining my decision, something they'll receive with the will reading. Of course, take your time." I wrote that letter sitting in Patricia's office with 30 years of disappointment and betrayal flowing through my pen. Tuesday evening, I put my plan into motion. I called Robert, my voice shaky with fake panic. "Robert, I need you to come over. Something's wrong. I'm having trouble breathing." "I'll be right there." "Should I call an ambulance?" "No, just come. Bring Jennifer and Madison. I need to see you all." They arrived within 20 minutes, Madison actually running from the car to my front door. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed they actually cared. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Madison knelt beside my chair, her face pale with concern. "I don't know," I whispered. "The pain in my chest, it's getting worse. I'm scared." Robert was already on the phone with 911. Jennifer was checking my pulse, her book club first aid training finally coming in handy. Madison held my hand, and for a moment she looked like the little girl I remembered. The paramedics arrived quickly, efficient and professional. My vital signs were stable, but they recommended I go to the hospital for observation, given my age and symptoms. "We'll follow you there," Robert said as they loaded me into the ambulance. At the hospital, they ran tests. EKG, blood work, chest x-rays. Everything came back normal, just as I'd known it would. But I played the part of a frightened elderly woman, weak and confused, talking about feeling like my time was running short. "The obituary," I whispered to Madison when the others had stepped out. Maybe it wasn't such a joke after all. Her eyes widened. "Don't say that, Grandma. You're going to be fine." "Am I?" "I'm old, Madison. older than I want to admit. And I'm tired. Tired of what? Tired of being alone? Tired of feeling like a burden? You're not a burden, she said quickly, but I could see her mind working. If I died now, before I'd finished updating my will, what would happen to the money? I'm glad I met with that attorney yesterday, I said softly. I got everything taken care of, just like you suggested. Relief flooded her face. Good. That's good, Grandma. Now you don't have to worry about anything. The doctor came in and announced I could go home, but should follow up with my regular physician. Robert and Jennifer offered to stay with me overnight, but I insisted I was fine. I just need rest, I told them, but thank you for coming. It means everything to know you care. They left reluctantly, Madison kissing my forehead, Robert promising to check on me in the morning. I went home and slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than air. I made Harold's coffee, sat at our kitchen table, and smiled at his empty chair. I did it, honey, I said to the morning light. I finally did it. My phone rang around 10. Madison. Grandma, how are you feeling? Much better, sweetheart. Thank you for asking. I was thinking, maybe I should come stay with you for a few days, just to make sure you're okay. That's sweet of you, but I'm fine. Besides, don't you have classes? Well, yes, but I mean, what's more important than family? Family. Now she wanted to talk about family. Madison, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you love me? What? Of course I love you, Grandma. What kind of question is that? I mean, really love me. Not what I can do for you or give you, but me, the person I am. There was a pause, too long and too telling. Grandma, you're scaring me. Why are you talking like this? I'm just thinking about things differently now. About what really matters. Well, what matters is that you're okay, and that we're family. We'll always be family. Always be family. Unless I stopped paying for the privilege. I love you too. Madison, I said. More than you'll ever know. After I hung up, I called Patricia. Mrs. Thompson, how are you feeling? Like a woman who's finally free. Is everything ready? Everything's in order. The new will is filed, the foundation has been notified, and your letter is sealed and ready? Perfect. Now I just have to wait for the right moment. That moment came sooner than I expected. Friday afternoon, Madison called to tell me she'd been accepted for a summer internship in New York. It's unpaid, she said, but it's with this amazing law firm. It could really help my career. The only problem is, I'd need money for an apartment and living expenses. Maybe $8,000 for the whole summer? $8,000. For an unpaid internship that would benefit only her. That's a lot of money, Madison. I know, but Grandma, this could change my whole future. Please? I looked at Harold's picture on the mantle, at the obituary still sitting on my counter, at the life I'd built and the people who'd taken it for granted. Of course, sweetheart, I said. Anything for family. Really? Oh my God, thank you so much. I'll come over this weekend and we can figure out the details. Actually, Madison, why don't we have everyone over for Sunday dinner? I have something important I want to discuss with the whole family. Sure, what about? Oh, just some decisions I've made about the future. Sunday dinner was going to be very interesting indeed. I spent Saturday preparing what would be my last family meal. I made all their favorites. Robert's beloved pot roast, Jennifer's preferred green bean casserole, Madison's favorite chocolate cake. If this was going to be our final gathering, I wanted it to be memorable. I also spent time writing a second letter, one I planned to read aloud. Patricia had the official letter that would accompany the will reading, but this one was for me to deliver personally. I wanted to see their faces when they heard the truth. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I set the table with my best china, the wedding set Harold and I had received 45 years ago. I even used the silver candlesticks that had been my mother's. They arrived promptly at 5, Madison bouncing through the door with her usual energy. Grandma, you look so much better, she exclaimed, hugging me tight. Are you feeling stronger? Much stronger, I said, and I meant it. I felt stronger than I had in years. Robert carried a bottle of wine, and Jennifer brought flowers from their garden. Such thoughtful gestures from people planning to inherit my house. So what's this big announcement? Robert asked as we sat down to dinner. You've got us all curious. Let's eat first, I said. We can talk over dessert. The conversation flowed normally. They complimented the food, shared stories about their week, asked about my health. Madison mentioned her New York internship again, making sure Robert and Jennifer knew about the financial commitment I'd apparently made. $8,000 is very generous, Mom, Robert said, cutting his roast. But can you afford that kind of expense? Oh, I think I can manage, I replied. After all, what's money for if not to help family? Jennifer smiled approvingly. That's such a wonderful attitude. So many elderly people become stingy with their money, hoarding it like they can take it with them. elderly people, stingy, hoarding. Each word landed like a small slap. As we finished the main course, Madison's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and grinned. "Sorry, it's my roommate. She's so excited about my internship. She says I'm so lucky to have a grandmother who can afford to support my dreams. Lucky to have a grandmother who can afford it. Not lucky to have a grandmother who loves her, or who believes in her, or who sacrifices for her. Lucky to have one with money." "Madison," I said carefully, "do you think your roommate is right? Do you think you're lucky?" "Of course. I mean, not everyone has family who can help them like this. Some of my friends have to work 3 jobs just to pay for school. And what do you think would happen if I couldn't help you anymore?" She laughed, but there was something nervous in it. "Well, that's not going to happen, right? I mean, you're healthy and you've got plenty of money saved up." Plenty of money saved up? They'd calculated my worth down to the penny. I stood up and began clearing the dishes. "Who wants coffee with dessert?" "I'll help," Jennifer offered, but I waved her away. "No, you all just relax. I want to do this myself." In the kitchen, I took a deep breath and pulled out the letter I'd written. My hands were steady as I folded it and put it in my pocket. When I returned with the coffee and cake, they were deep in conversation about Madison's future plans. "And after the internship, I'll have such great connections," Madison was saying. "I might not even need to finish my last semester if someone offers me a job. That would save Grandma some money," Robert said with a chuckle. Save Grandma some money. As if my financial well-being was their concern rather than their opportunity. I served the cake and coffee, then sat down and folded my hands in my lap. "Now," I said, "about that announcement I mentioned." They all turned their attention to me, faces expectant and slightly nervous. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since my birthday," I began. "About family, about love, about what really matters in life." "Mom, you're not getting all philosophical on us, are you?" Robert said with forced lightness. "In a way, yes. You see, I've realized something important. I've been living my life all wrong." Madison's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been so focused on giving, on providing, on making sure everyone else was taken care of, that I forgot to take care of myself. I forgot to consider what I actually wanted from my relationships. But that's what makes you such a wonderful grandmother," Jennifer said quickly. "You're so generous, so selfless." Am I selfless, Jennifer? Or am I just scared of being alone? The question hung in the air like smoke. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Robert shifted in his chair. Jennifer stared at her coffee cup, and Madison's face had gone pale. "I don't understand what you're trying to say, Mom," Robert finally said. I pulled the letter from my pocket and unfolded it slowly. "Let me be more clear then. Grandma, you're making me nervous," Madison whispered. "Good. You should be nervous, because I'm about to tell you something that's going to change everything." I looked at each of their faces, memorizing this moment. In a few minutes, the masks would come off completely. "Wednesday night, when I came to your house for dinner, Robert, I arrived early. I heard you all talking in the living room." Robert's face went white. "Mom, whatever you think you heard, I heard you planning my financial future. I heard you discussing my will, my house, my money, as if I was already dead. I heard Madison ask how you'd split the proceeds from selling my home." Madison's fork clattered to her plate. We were just what? Just planning how to spend my inheritance before I'm even gone?" Jennifer tried to recover. "Margaret, you're taking this out of context. We were just having a theoretical conversation about how convenient it is that I feel guilty about Harold's death, about how I always come around because I can't help myself, about how that obituary might make me more generous while I'm still alive." The words hit them like physical blows. Robert's mouth opened and closed without sound. Jennifer's hands were shaking. Madison looked like she might be sick. "That obituary wasn't a joke, was it, Madison? It was a test. You wanted to see how I'd react to thinking about my own death. You wanted to plant the idea that my time was running out so I'd be more willing to spend money on you." "That's not true," Madison said, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Isn't it? Then explain to me why you wrote such detailed information. Explain why you included things only family would know. Explain why you watched my face so carefully when I opened it." Madison burst into tears. "I'm sorry, Grandma, it wasn't supposed to be mean. It wasn't supposed to. We just thought—" "You thought what?" "We thought you needed to understand that we're your legacy, that your money should go to us because we're all you have." There it was, the truth, finally spoken aloud. "And did any of you ever consider asking me what I wanted? Did anyone think to find out if I was happy with my life? or lonely or afraid? Did anyone care about me as a person rather than as a source of funding? None of them answered because we all knew the answer was no. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden Harold and I had planted together. Do you know what I realized this week? I realized that I don't actually have a family. I have customers. Mom, please, Robert started. Let me finish. My voice was steel now. I have people who show up when they need something and disappear when they don't. I have people who calculate my worth in dollars and plan my death like it's a business transaction. I turned back to face them. So, I've made some changes. What kind of changes? Jennifer asked, her voice tight. I met with an estate attorney this week. A different one than you suggested, Robert. I rewrote my will completely. The room went dead silent. Even Madison stopped crying. Everything I own, every penny I have, is now going to the Sunset Manor Foundation. They help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. Madison gasped. You can't do that. I already did. It's signed, witnessed, and filed. Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Mom, you can't be serious. We're your family. Are you? When was the last time any of you visited me without wanting something? When was the last time you called just to check on me? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life that didn't involve my bank account? They stared at me, unable to answer because the truth was too damning. Madison, you asked for $8,000 for your internship. Do you know what I'm going to do with that money instead? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm going to donate it to a scholarship fund for students whose families can't afford to help them. Students who have to work 3 jobs like the friends you mentioned. Students who understand the value of money because they've had to earn it themselves. You're being cruel, Jennifer said, her composure finally cracking. You're punishing us for caring about our future. Caring about your future? You were planning my death, Jennifer. You were discussing my assets like I was already gone. How is that caring about anything except your own greed? I walked back to the table and looked at each of them one more time. The saddest part is that I would have given you anything if you just loved me. Really loved me, not what I could provide. But you taught me that love in this family comes with a price tag. Madison jumped up and grabbed my arm. Grandma, please. I do love you. I know I made mistakes, but I can change. I gently removed her hand. Can you? Can you honestly tell me that if I had no money, if I was just a lonely old woman with nothing to offer, you'd still want to spend time with me? Her silence was answer enough. I thought so. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think it's time for you all to leave. Mom, we need to talk about this, Robert said desperately. You can't just throw away our entire relationship over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, Robert. This is clarity. For the first time in years, I see exactly where I stand with all of you. They gathered their things slowly, reluctantly. At the door, Madison made one last attempt. What about my internship? What about school? What about it? You're 22 years old, Madison. It's time you learn to take care of yourself. But how am I supposed to pay for everything? The same way millions of other students do. Work, study, apply for scholarships, figure it out. After they left, I sat in Harold's chair and listened to the silence. But this time, it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. The next morning, I called Sunset Manor and arranged a tour. The assisted living community was nothing like the expensive facility Jennifer had mentioned. It was modest, warm, filled with people who'd worked hard their whole lives and understood the value of simple pleasures. We have a lovely apartment available, the director told me. It overlooks the garden, and Mrs. Chen next door makes the most wonderful soup. I signed the lease that afternoon. 2 weeks later, I moved out of the house where I'd raised Robert, where I'd loved Harold, where I'd given everything to people who'd taken it all for granted. I left it exactly as it was with all the furniture and memories intact. Let the foundation decide what to do with it. My new apartment was small but bright. I had Harold's picture on the mantel, my favorite books on the shelves, and a peace I hadn't felt in years. I never heard from Robert, Jennifer, or Madison again. According to my lawyer, they'd tried to contest the will, but there were no grounds. I'd been deemed mentally competent, the documents were properly executed, and I'd left a detailed letter explaining my reasoning. 6 months later, I was sitting in the community garden when Mrs. Chen brought me a cup of her famous soup. You look happy, she observed. I am happy. For the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I belong. And your family? Do they visit? I smiled, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. I don't have that kind of family anymore, but I have something better. What's that? I have myself, and I've learned that's enough. The fake obituary had been right about one thing. Margaret Eleanor Thompson had died. The woman who'd sacrificed everything for people who didn't deserve it, who'd bought love with money, who'd lived in fear of being alone, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that real love doesn't come with conditions, and that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only see you as an opportunity. I was 78 years old, and my life was finally beginning.